So I'm going to be introducing Sheri Nault. She's a Métis artist and writer. She received her BFA from Alberta College of Art and Design in 2012, also studying at the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland. She's currently the Indigenous Practicum participant in research and administration at the Banff Art Centre. In 2014, she received second place in the Southern Alberta Art Gallery's writing competition. Recent projects include an internship producing a blog for the Mountain Standard Time 7 Performance Art Festival. Her creative practice explores the role of artist as storyteller and narrator, questioning the value of objectivity. She pursues accurate, honest, and personal content, questioning hierarchical notions of objectivity as a correct mode for intellectualism. She aims to build an academically founded dialogue through subjectivity. So please help me welcome Sheri.
Hi there, everybody. That's the first time I've ever heard somebody read my bio publicly, so it was really interesting for me. Last spring, myself and several other women I work with at the Banff Centre began talking about what it's like to read to someone, to have someone read to you, to share something that's meaningful, has impacted you, or influenced you in a group and to a group of people. As a result of this conversation, myself and several other women gathered on a spring evening at Cascade Ponds near Banff. Each of us brought literature that was meaningful to us or that we had created that affected us or tied into our experiences, and we shared openly, giving of ourselves to the group. This, to me, is what it feels like to be in a system of mentorship. Each individual gives what they can, sharing knowledge, sharing experience, sharing personal stories, and creating a larger narrative. Perhaps I have an advantage in feeling that way, as my role at this point in my life is primarily that of a mentee. As a Métis artist, writer, and art facilitator early in my career, I know that I will always be learning from and affected by those around me who take on the role of mentor in my life. Through these individuals, I grow, develop, and expand my experiences, goals, and opportunities. I'm grateful to those who take on this role, who share their wisdom and experience with me, and I'm grateful to everyone who is here at this colloquium and contributing their knowledge and experiences to the rest of us as a group. My creative practice explores the role of an artist as a storyteller and a narrator, questioning the value of objectivity. Though the form it takes may vary greatly between my art, my research, and my writing, I pursue honest and personal content, and I question academically privileged knowledge as the correct mode for the production and dissemination of art and culture. And I just say that again because it sort of ties into how I'm going to talk about my experience as an mentee. I'm currently the Indigenous Research and Administrative Practicum participant in Visual Arts at the Banff Centre. Since arriving there, I've had the privilege to explore and expand upon my role as storyteller and narrator, as I do again by speaking here today. In my position at the Banff Centre, I fulfill a variety of roles. I help to facilitate art residencies, do research and writing for the department, and work closely with the Director of Visual Arts on special projects. In this program, I have 3 mentors who I work with regularly: Angela Shenstead, Kelly Moynihan, and Jen Mizuek. Angela and Kelly are both program coordinators running the visual arts residencies at the center, and Jen Mizuek became the director of the visual arts department last spring. In this past year, the ability of my mentors to acknowledge, yes, I've been there, and reflect my experience back to me with a personal and emotional connection has been particularly vital to moving forward in my career and becoming more familiar with myself. This position is the first time I have ever been formally mentored. My relationship to these women is within a structured system. They supervise my work and assign me tasks, both related to my Banff Centre activities and in my own practice. They oversee my year-long practicum and my growth within it, and they help me to pursue tasks that are of interest to me, supporting my endeavors and sharing their knowledge and experience. Within this structure, my position is comparable to an internship. I have facilitated time for independent projects, support planning and shaping these projects, including helpful criticisms, and the expectation that I will continue to build and develop my own goals and work outside of the center during my time there. I have an interesting sort of structure where I have a 5-day work week, but one of those days each week is dedicated to working on my own practice. And once a week, I usually have a meeting or a check-in with my mentors where we discuss research, my work at the center, and reflect on a variety of topics, often going quite off topic and speaking more personally, sharing stories, experiences, and interests, Our conversations go far beyond the advice that these women offer me in regards to my administrative and research duties. In some ways, they're like my short tale of sitting and reading stories to each other. This openness has been effective for me in a variety of ways. There's a long list of roles associated with my position at the center. Tasks I begin with, which have broadened as I've gained more comfort and skills. My role has shifted as well, though, and this has been really significant for me. It reflects my personal interests in research and skills areas. New tasks, which challenge me and reflect my experience, have been added to my workloads. Through their receptiveness to my goals and interests, my mentors have ensured that I am challenged, and in being challenged, I'm more engaged in doing better work and learning more in my position there. The mentor and mentee relationship relies on the mutual transmission of knowledge, history, questions, inquiry, information, stories, and sharing. Memory and orality, trust and respect are integral to this process, and learning is experienced by both the mentee and the mentor. And this always brings me back to thinking about that night that many of us women met and shared our stories. I'm able to speak to Jen, Kelly, and Angela honestly on almost any topic. To me, successful institutional spaces, in relation to my own research interests, but also in the way that I've experienced this mentee program, break down concepts of hierarchy and the notion that the personal must be separate from the professional. To be personal, to be subjective and honest, is a decolonizing force in a large institutional space, dismantling systems of power, but still respecting knowledge and experience within those systems. I'm able to openly voice confusion or even frustration as I work through the learning curve of operating within an institution. My familiarity is mostly with small nonprofits, and learning to function within a bureaucracy has been challenging at times. When I would first work on tasks that would become someone else's as a part of my position doing research, I struggled to feel no longer personally invested in them or critical of how they were carried on by someone else. I also knew that this sort of hang-up was unwelcome and unnecessary in my workplace. Angela, who is also a yoga instructor, empathized with this struggle and shared an analogy she keeps in mind when she's having this same problem. And she was a bit embarrassed to tell me, but it's that you've got to keep your eyes on your own yoga mat. This is a really simple thing, but if you've done yoga, you'll understand that this analogy is incredibly apt. You don't want to be on your hands in some awkward position thinking somebody else is doing that better than you. Looking back at the personal moments of connection and guidance shared, even in this professional context, are what has truly affected me. And though I've spoken more about the kind of business side of what I do in my position at the Banff Center so far, what has really been meaningful is how I've been able to connect personally and emotionally in a year where many events in my life have changed my life drastically. When my grandfather passed away, Angela and I related stories of our grandfathers. When two of my friends were killed very suddenly and violently, Jen consoled me that I didn't need to somehow get over it as I struggled to focus at work. She encouraged me to take my time to be hurt as is natural. Kelly is an incredibly enthusiastic and exuberant woman, and in the midst of having an art coordinator for a music festival I was working with suddenly cancel a very large project, Kelly worked through each email that I wrote with me. Despite my frustrations, no bridges were burned, and I expect I may work with the festival in the future. Angela is a member of the One Arrow First Nation. As an Indigenous friend that I met during my degree, encouraged me to pursue this position in Banff at the center, never doubting that it was a position I would excel in. He told me that I had to meet Angela, had to work with her. Working so closely and so personally, and having the opportunity to relate so openly with Angela has strengthened my understanding of what it means for me to be Métis. Socialized structures of silence that I hadn't realized still restricted me have faded. When I'm uncertain, I can honestly say to her, oh hey, this thing that I'm involved with, I don't really feel good about what they're doing here. And though she won't tell me what she thinks I should do or what she thinks the right answer is, I can trust her to contribute her thoughts and to let me come to my own conclusions. She's had more time to reflect on these topics and issues, and I am fortunate that she shares these reflections with me. I share mine with her as well, and we both learn and grow. At the Banff Center, I've encountered so many powerful Indigenous artists. I feel fortunate to work somewhere that has strong Indigenous programming. I consider my peers to be mentors to me as well. A dear friend of mine, Cora Allen, who is Maori and working for the gallery through the practicum program, is one of the strongest, most incredibly influential Indigenous women that I have met in the last year. We've had the opportunity on many occasions to go and see different programming at the Banff Center together, discuss it, and have a dialogue that crosses oceans and continents. which has been really incredible and powerful. In February, we had an art residency with Post Commodity, and I was able to work with both the artists who were running the program and the artists who were there as attendees, and learn from their experiences, which they very openly shared. Artists who are Indigenous dance, writing, and leadership programs come through the center. They come seeking mentors, but are mentors themselves and are mentors to me as I encounter them on campus. We also have an elder who frequently works with Indigenous leadership on campus. I only know him as Elder Tom, sort of a familiar way of referring to him. I'm not actually sure what his last name is, and I could have looked it up, but I prefer to tell my story the way I experience it. Since arriving at the Banff Center, I've had the privilege to explore and expand on my role, as I said already, as a storyteller and a narrator, as a mentee, and perhaps also as a mentor. I've taken risks, I've published writing that has pushed my boundaries, made me uncomfortable because of how much I was sharing, and been well received in the process. Initiating projects, I've risked failing in them, I have failed at times, and I've had successes. I've developed a stronger sense of myself as both queer and Indigenous. My research has focused on decolonizing the white cube and the art world, which are primarily white male-dominated spaces. And this research focuses on new venues and definitions of art, academics, and professionalism. I do not believe this is news to Indigenous art communities. I think we're all very aware of this, but an issue that arises working within contemporary art systems that we affect through mentoring one another and sharing our experiences openly is this sort of rigidity and hierarchy. By dropping fronts and facades and creating accessible discourse through conversations and sharing with one another, we help to break this down. With an intent toward dialogue in mind, now that I've shared a bit of a summation of my experience at the Banff Center and what really has affected me the most there, which is the personal and the emotional, despite having an incredible amount of very strong professional guidance, I'd like to voice some of the other aspects of being a mentee that I've experienced, because they're problematic, or they're highlights, or they're dynamics that I think it's important to consider. One of the problematic aspects of always being met with greater challenges and given greater challenges as I succeed at the Banff Center is that my workload continues to grow. And there's a threshold where this workload can begin to hinder other mentoring experiences, like sharing and discussing lists of what I have read, research that I've done, attending lectures, and working with my mentors in a way that isn't solely focused on tasks that I complete for the center. I really appreciate that I'm given the opportunity to work on so many more projects, but one of the things that I think we're all striving to balance there is how I can have those opportunities but still have these personal and intimate connections. Outside, and this is inside an institution actually, power structures can also be problematic. These work in different ways when you're outside of an institution. Inside of the institution, those with authority don't realize necessarily when they're shutting down dialogue that could affect growth, if it is aside from their present concerns. And this is something that I really appreciate my friend Cora Allen for, because as people who are both in an intern-like position at the center, we can always discuss these kind of issues very openly with each other. And then finally, there's something that I'd like to voice as a mentee that isn't about working in an institution, but it's something that I think it's important to acknowledge. Outside of an institution, I've had a mentor help me to achieve a great and unexpected success in my career, and shortly following this, he expressed a strong romantic interest in me and was somewhat unrelenting in pursuing it. This is a difficult and problematic situation because of the difference in power between us. I don't want to focus too heavily on this, but I want to acknowledge it as a problematic and a potential problem of having mentoring situations outside of an institution, because acknowledging things like this is how we are aware of them and prevent them from becoming more problematic situations or being perpetuated into the future. And I and my absent mentors are curious to engage with all of you about how to make the mentor and mentee relationship a more productive and enriching experience for all involved, particularly in an institutional context. I realize that I may have jumped from a few different topics there, but mostly what I'd like to say is that in my experiences as a mentee, you can get so many skills and so much learning from having somebody there to guide you in what you're doing as a professional. But being able to connect with somebody personally and speak with them openly is what makes those relationships really powerful, makes them affect you, and makes you comfortable enough to continue to grow without them, or within them. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to my narrative. Merci.